Welcome to the Strong as Fuck podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Santucci, and join us for some strong conversations.
All right, welcome back to the Strong as Fuck podcast. I am your host, Kenny Santucci, and sometimes people come along in your life that are meant to help you out, and that's exactly what this gentleman does. You know, the podcast is a lot about business. We talk about how hard it is to run a business here in New York City. And a very good friend of mine, my friend Rachel, said, hey, you need a little help on your business, as do we all. If you're going to be good at something, well, you better find somebody who's better at it than you who could help you out. So with no further ado, my man Ian Jarvis is here with me, and he's going to drop some knowledge on how to become he helps people, he coaches people through business like I coach people through fitness. So Ian, you were a bit of a delinquent as a younger man. I think, you know, when I first met you and we were sitting at the Ritz-Carlton, two fancy guys just having some $8 coffees, yeah. And we were talking about it, and I said, holy shit, that's one hell of a story. Why don't you give us a little backstory on how you were running from the law?
Sure. Once upon a time, I was a nice Jewish boy from New Jersey, and I went to Georgetown, dropped out my junior year because I was fundamentally bored with what was going on there, and wound up driving around the States in my Chevy half-ton pickup with a Triumph Bonneville motorcycle in the back.
I'm always interested in what years, like when people start, like I try to get an idea of like the era, like what was it, 80s?
The century?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Decade.
It was the 70s.
70s.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
times were different. Love was free.
Yes.
Music was loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drugs were
everywhere.
Yeah. And they didn't have there was still a belief that drugs were all positive. There was all gain and no pain.
I have a question for you though. At that time, you know, were a lot of your friends going to college? Like, was that a thing? Because my mom never went to college, right? And she's a little bit older than you. And I just don't think it was looked at as like a thing you had to do to get to the next level.
I'm not sure about the second part of your statement, but the first part's true. It was not a thing you had to do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that, you know, this was a generation that grew up in great comfort. Mm-hmm. Because the world was very comfortable and Americans were very comfortable. We just won the war. Yeah. And so I think that part of the generation, the issue with my generation is that we grew up without, not terribly goal-oriented because there wasn't a lot of pressure on us. Mm-hmm. So the idea is we didn't have to go to college. I don't think anyone thought too much in advance of that. So I dropped out and I was driving around the States with motorcycle in the back. By then I was a mechanic. Mm-hmm. And I went out, I was in California and I was all over the place. I wound up in Cincinnati and
How did you wind up there? Driving around the country, and that's where you was.
There was a guy I wanted to meet, and he happened to live there. I looked him up, and he was in Cincinnati. He's a fabulous jazz pianist. And there was this burgeoning scene around drugs, and, you know, everybody dropped out. And one of the people in there was, in this group was the kid who inherited $1 million, and, you know, his parents died, and he quickly became a junkie. Yeah. And decided to get married on the spot, and then at that point said he was taking her to Europe for honeymoon, and would I come along because I think he needed a kind of valet.
Okay.
He was that screwed up.
He's like, yeah, I'll just pay you to do a bunch of
just
random shit.
come along, you know.
$1 million then was
huge. Absolutely.
20 million.
Yeah, it was serious money.
Serious money.
And so we went to Europe together. I brought a girlfriend along, in the four of us. And within 3 weeks, he'd run out of heroin. And he flew back to Cincinnati and left his girlfriend, his wife, and my girlfriend and me together, and gave us some money and split. So those were those times. And
Jesus.
So we were like, where will we go? And we went to this place that not a lot of people had heard of at that time called Ibiza, this island.
Oh, okay.
Really. And it was nothing.
You guys were probably the first ones there.
Honestly, there were maybe 50, 75 folks there. A house cost $15 a month.
That's insane.
It was that kind of place. But to get back on track, I started exporting drugs to the States. And I would do it by buying a motorcycle and taking the engine crankcase apart, mm-hmm. and take the the crankshaft and the connecting rods and stuff, and put them in a separate package, send that to a separate address in the States. And I had this big cavity inside the engine, and I'd fill it with hash. Put the motorcycle in a crate, and I'd send it to the States. And, you know, in those days, they would open up the crate, and they'd see a motorcycle, and they'd go, okay, it's a motorcycle. And
what was your drug of choice?
Oh, it was hash. Yeah.
It's funny because I got a buddy of mine who he was one of the producers on a show I used to be on, and he's a big hash guy. He's about your age.
Yeah. Well, in Europe, there was no grass.
Okay.
It didn't exist. And obviously all that's changed. But in those days, it was strictly hash, and you'd roll a cigarette and drop the hash on and smoke it in the cigarette.
Why do you think it's not as relevant as a drug anymore? Like,
As a drug?
yeah, like people don't, like, you never hear anybody be like, oh, we'll get some.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I just think that
It's more peaceful drug.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was just
It's
going to say
more of
people I think are looking for bigger and bigger events.
Yeah.
You know, it was peace and love. I don't think we're quite
We're
there.
at that point.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we're coping with a whole different level.
There's a meme on social media, and it's got all the different Jokers from the Batmans, from like the 60s Joker to now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it basically follows like drug culture, right? Like in the 70s, he was like this kind of hippie.
Right.
He'd be into smoking hash or, you know, doing, smoking marijuana and stuff. And then it's like, now it just gets into the hard meth. He's got the tattoos on his face, and
which is what I saw that.
Which is what's going on right now.
And I saw that in California. I went to San Francisco, and there was this idea it was going to be a great place, and all I saw was meth starting to make its introduction there. And
in the 70s.
Yeah, and I left.
Really?
I turned around and left.
So that's been going on for a while.
Forever. And so anyway, so I had a couple of these wonderful shipments, and then a guy showed up in Ibiza. His name was Billy Frick, and he was a third generation of the Frick family, which you may or may not remember or know, put together U.S. Steel in the late 1800s. And there's a museum here in New York called the Frick Museum. It's the same family. Anyway, net, it was a family tradition. When you turned 21, you got $50,000. So Billy shows up with $50K, and we're, high and high again. And we decide we're going to be titans in the drug business. And I got a Land Rover, and I went to the Reef Mountains in Morocco, and I scored 60 kilos of hash.
Wow.
And I shipped it in.
What's that look like? Give me an idea, like what's 60 kilos?
Yeah, I'd say a rectangle about like that.
Really?
Yeah. And I shipped it in. Of course, we were insane. It was terrible. There was no real plan. And there was a bust. And
it's a lot of shit to get caught with.
Yeah. And everybody got caught except me. 5 guys went down on that. I escaped from half a dozen FBI agents at Albany International Airport.
What? Give me the story. You're at the airport.
Yeah, I was at the
airport. I feel like it's a hard place. I guess back then it wasn't, security wasn't as tough.
Well, we weren't doing the deal there. The deal was going down elsewhere, and these guys were involved, and I happened to be away. So when the FBI closed in and snapped those guys up, I knew about it. I heard about it. And it was this huge snowstorm in Buffalo that day. It was like 3 feet, and I had nowhere to go. I couldn't get out of town. Didn't have a car. So I went to the airport just because I didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
The airport was shut. It was closed. So I'm there 40 minutes, and there's no one in this airport. And a guy shows up in a gray 3-piece suit carrying a suitcase, and he sits near me. So, okay. And it's like clear.
Classic movie.
Yeah, right at
sequence.
Exactly, right there. And he starts this conversation, and I'm like playing this game back and forth with him. And at some point he says, so where are you going? And I pulled a city out of my head. I said, Miami. He went, isn't that amazing? He said, that's where I'm going. I'm a school teacher, and I got to. So then I went to get a coffee, and I went into the coffee shop at lunch, and there's 6 guys, white guys, all in their 30s, in brand new mechanics uniforms. Yeah. And one of them is looking at me like I'm going to die. I mean, just staring right through me. And I went, okay, so that's where the reserves are. And I I managed to get to a payphone without them seeing it. I have a twin brother. So I called my brother up. He's in Pittsburgh. I had him come by and get me. He swings in. I said, when you see me, come up the steps. When you see me, just, okay, be ready to lock and load, right? So in the meantime, I had this insane conversation for 3 more hours, just crazy, complete, one lie after another. But I managed, I went to the bathroom 2 or 3 times, get him used to seeing me go to the bathroom because it was right near the exit door. I see my brother, he puts his head down. I walk to the bathroom. I leave behind everything, right? My life, my guitar, my everything I own. And I walked to the bathroom. I was going to pee at the last minute. I fucking turned.
And run.
Got out the door and got away.
Did he run after? Yeah.
The guys ran after me. But because they're FBI and surreptitious, they had parked their cars in the back. And there was all this snow and they couldn't get out. They never followed me.
Oh, shit.
We escaped into the night. 3 days later, cross the border to Canada, take a plane to Paris. And I arrived in Paris this morning, this beautiful winter morning. And I had nothing. I had no family, no friends, no money, no past.
What did your brother, what was the departing situation with you and your brother?
A big hug. He handed me his overcoat because I didn't have a coat. And he got back in the car and went back to the States, And a year and a half later, they tracked him down because in a technical sense, he was an accessory.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the end, when they heard the real story about what happened from him, it was like, oh, no, we can't. You know what I mean? They're not going to prosecute him for helping his twin brother, et cetera, et cetera. So they let that go. So I arrived in Paris with my whole life dead behind me, missing, and my whole life to make because I had nothing. I had no money, nothing. And I lived there for 8 years as a wanted federal felon.
8 years in Paris?
Yeah. Well, not in Paris. I was in Paris. I was in London. I got married. I had a kid. I lived with 2 prostitutes for a couple of years in Paris.
That must have been fun.
It wasn't bad. And I lived in Ibiza. I worked in Morocco for a while. I was working for the King of Morocco.
I always find it interesting when I hear these stories because I have some friends who've been on the run as well. And what are you doing for quick cash?
My life was all about present tense. It was all quick cash, really.
Yeah.
Except, no, when I got married, I moved to London. My wife was 10 years older and had 2 children. So I was 22 and I had 3 children I was responsible for.
So how old were you when all this happened?
I was 21 when it started, right? Oh, it was a year later, I got married. And I got in London with, I don't know, $40, no place to stay. Well, no.
And they couldn't come after you?
They could, but I wasn't at that level. It was, it's like having a standing warrant, a bench warrant or something,
okay.
Right? It's the same as having a bench warrant. So here's what the danger is. The danger is, if I got stopped at any time, I was an illegal immigrant this whole time. If I got stopped for anything, and I came close to this dozens of times,
yeah,
and somebody actually pulled me in, they would have made a normal inquiry about me as an American to
the embassy.
No, there's a center in Europe for. It'll come up. I'll remember it in 5 minutes, and that would have hit the jackpot. Then I would have had a free trip home, courtesy of the FBI.
Yeah.
So that's kind of on your shoulder the whole time. But it wasn't like they were looking; they were waiting.
Yep. So
I lived in all these places, and I would be a mechanic, or I would sell drugs, or I would, I lived in France long enough to pick up French. Like I became fluent,
okay,
but I learned it on the street, right? And that gave me a ticket above my pay grade in the social structure in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
So I was getting invited to these wonderful, really delightful dinner parties, and I wound up sitting next to a guy who was working for the King of Morocco as a designer. And 2 weeks later, I was in Morocco working in the Royal Palace. And the guy liked me and kept me working there. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's one thing after another.
One of the things that I tell people all the time is I find it fascinating when you meet somebody who's got such a great personality that their personality could get them seated at any table. It could get them into any room. And I think that's such a skill to have if your personality could lend itself to any situation. And when I look for people in business or in leisure, it's always, would I want to hang out with this person? Are they magnetic enough where they draw people in? Because if you have somebody like that, then they could work any job. They'd be good at any position. So I guess that's why through your 20s, you were just a jack of many trades.
It was a chameleon-like existence in many ways,
It's like Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah, it wasn't that far away from it, really. Yeah. I just wasn't working on the scale he was. I was able to survive in a lot of different levels, but I think there's a sensitivity to, you got to walk in other people's shoes. When I tell people I'm talking about business, I say, if you're in sales, it's never about what's in it for you.
Yeah.
What you have to understand is what's in it for them.
And how old were you when you started to realize this? Like when you were...
Realize what?
That business isn't about you. It's not about like, how does this make me money? It's more about how do I lend myself or create a service, create a product that has the customer in mind.
Well, I think I knew that always, but I think as a conscious understanding, I think it came in later when I actually was, involved in.
But you were already doing this.
I was in business all the time.
Yeah,
I was selling cars. But I think we're in sales all the time.
Yeah, 100%.
I think all of us are in sales all the time.
The way you dress, the way you present yourself, you're always selling yourself.
Yeah.
You have to.
I want to walk.
Even if you don't want people, and this throws back to my business and what I tell people all the time. When I say it starts with your physical appearance, it starts with you working out, it starts with you taking care of yourself. If you are one of these people, if you look attractive, I didn't write this fucking rule that says, hey, if you are more attractive, more people want to give you money. They want to be around you. You become more magnetic. It's just human nature. It's the way we are. Like attractive women or attractive men can sell anything. So if you know that that's the game, right? Well, you could win just by taking care of yourself.
I'm a great believer in that. And I know you also know, as I do, that it's not, you don't have to be beautiful to make it work. But if you have this
but it
presence,
helps.
No, this presence is so important. You can walk in the room, it walks in with you.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to sell because it'll come to you if you're just quiet.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about the sense of the things that we can't change, right? Like nowadays, everybody wants to change their nose, change their chin, change their fucking eyeballs. Yeah. They'll change every part of their body.
Yeah.
But if you just took care of yourself, you already send that signal. It's subconscious to everyone that, hey, this person works hard. They take care of themselves. They have some level of dedication because it didn't happen by mistake.
Correct. And then as you get older, you don't keep it by mistake. You keep it for working out.
Absolutely. Well, you got to double time it now.
You're really, because you're fighting gravity, you're fighting everything.
How old are you? Let's just
I'm a man of a certain age.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, it's like, there's a lot of people, there are a lot of people who, say, oh, I can't do this because I'm older. I can't do that. And it's like, here you are, you're still living in the city. You're running around. I know you're running around, servicing clients, going everywhere you need to be.
Yeah.
I don't think that ever stops unless you want it to stop.
Yeah. As you get older, you come up to a moment in time where you risk not being relevant. And I'm a person who wants to be relevant until I take my last breath. So, and if you make that decision, then you're constantly engaged. I just got a radio show up in Great Barrington, which starts in January.
Where's that?
You and I hadn't talked about this at all. Where's Great Barrington?
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
About 100 miles north of here, just at the juncture of Connecticut, New York, and Massachusetts, where they meet. Great Barrington's.
Okay.
And I've written this memoir, and that I have 2 agents who are terribly excited about it. So
it's kind of like your whole life story.
A memoir by definition is not a whole life story. A memoir is a segment of your life. So this is that segment of my life when I went through the drug deal and the bust, to this whole arc where I came back to the States, spent my first night in jail, back in the States in 8 years, got through the judicial system, made it come out on my side, and then totally bullshitted my way into my first job
Back in the States.
Back in the States 90 days after I got custody of my daughter, because that's what changes your life. You know, I've been this indulgent lifestyle for so long. And now there's this 9-year-old girl who is looking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so 90 days later, I had this job with a major French multinational. And 18 months after that, I was vice president of the U.S. division. And my wild and woolly story became very charming.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's the memoir. It's about going from here to there.
Well, you hear it a lot about, different rappers and athletes, and they come from this hard background. They've gotten some trouble, and then they turned it around.
Yeah.
And now it's, how do you really kind of turn that around? Like, sum up how that happens. You go from being a felon on the run to, hey, now I'm working in corporate America, helping CEOs.
There's actually a very simple trigger, a certain age. I think when we get between 28 and 32, something kicks back in and you want to slay the elephant.
Mm-hmm.
You want to own a house. You want to put away these other things, and you want to be part of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got that. I absolutely believe it's in our DNA. And then the trigger was my daughter, which she came in when I was 31, and I was frustrated. I wanted to be there, but her presence in my life gave me an incredible push to make that happen. I mean, I created a resume for this French company. The only words of truth in it was my name and my phone number. You couldn't do that today, obviously.
Yeah,
but everything else was a lie.
Do you think you succeeded because of the times? Had you have been,
I succeeded in this way by these times.
Yeah.
I do believe I would succeed in any time because I'm humble as ever. But but at that moment, in that time, I was able to get away with this kind of stuff. When I showed up at Philadelphia International Airport after years, I went to jail that night. And
you just spent the one night in jail.
Yeah, I made bail the next day, and
and how much was bail at the time?
It was nothing. It was $50K. So I needed $5,000. But the prosecution's sitting there going, he's a flight risk. You got to keep him in jail. And this federal judge is looking at me, and he goes to the prosecution. He says, "I understand Mr. Jarvis turned himself in." "Yes, Your Honor." "And you have his passport?" "Yes, Your Honor." He said, $50,000 bail. Cut me loose right there. And
so now you give them the $5,000.
Well, yeah, but the key was when I got busted by the FBI. And 20 minutes after I showed up at the airport, I was handcuffed to a water pipe in a room at the airport, right? And the FBI, 40 minutes later, the FBI showing, and they're like, they just want to know who I've killed in the last 8 years. That's their attitude, right?
No shit.
And so slowly that dissembles because they sound these faxes and everything. But what I did was immediately I said, "I'm guilty. I did this. I'm not fighting you on this."
No.
It sucks all the air out of the system.
Well, it's funny because my dad was a cop, my brother's a cop, my uncles were cops. So I've been in and around cops, and they're like, if you don't want a problem, just submit. And that's what I think a lot of people have a hard time doing. Like, even when you get pulled over, I've been pulled over plenty of times. If you shut your car off, turn the lights on, and put your hands on the steering wheel, it just makes them a lot more comfortable.
That's exactly what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And now they're like, okay, I don't need to be as scared as I would be if you had the car still running. Yeah. So it's like doing those things puts the cop at ease. So now it's not this like weird confrontation.
You're in sales.
Yeah. Now you're like, all right, hey man,
you're selling yourself as an okay guy.
Yeah.
And then you say what you did, and half the time they're going to go, "Get out of here. It's okay. It's okay."
As soon as you start mother effing them, they're like, "No, wait, hold on, this guy's
push
a jerk."
back. Yeah. Let me, the hand
break his fucking balls because he's breaking mine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as soon as you say that to the FBI, the temperature goes out of the room, but also the temperature goes out of the whole system.
Yeah. Because now they're like, I don't need to smash his head up against the desk.
I'm not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and hours and time proving the guy's full of shit because he just pleaded guilty. When you plead guilty, that meant, in my case, because my story was about what I did 5,000 miles away, nobody bothered to check. So I created this vision of me as this middle-class guy trying to live a middle-class life in Europe.
Yeah, yeah.
And nobody bothered to check because I had pled guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all the system wanted. So anyway, I got, blah, 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 3 years probation.
And now here we are.
Yeah.
So we met because my friend Rachel, also my client, and I trust her opinion. She's like, hey, you got to start working with Ian. And she's like, well, that's a question for every time we talk about business. She's like, that's a question for Ian. What makes you such an expert on the whole world of business? Do you the way you look at it, is it basically a sales job? Like, kind of give me your tactics on how.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Because the question is, how can I work in any industry is basically the question. Mm-hmm. And the answer is I'm dealing with the human condition. I'm dealing with people and how they act under certain circumstances. So it doesn't matter if you're running a multinational or you're running a business buying and selling cars or houses. I'm dealing with people and what they suffer from and the habits they have. And so, my job is to look at people's habits and see where they come from and then work on breaking people's habits, because obviously I come to it with an idea about how this should be done. Mm-hmm. I believe 95% of the businesses in the world are making money in spite of themselves. They're badly run. So there's plenty of room for change. So
I think I told you about this when we first met. I had met an older gentleman years ago in California, and he had told me, he goes, there's no such thing as a bad business. It's bad people and bad management.
1,000%. Yeah. I will ask a client 3 or 4 questions about who they're dealing with, mm-hmm. and I'm going to know how that person acts. Now I can talk to you about what you need to do to get through, past, or sideways on that individual, because I'm also going to only ask. I don't need to know a lot about an individual to know how they're going to handle themselves. Mm-hmm. I often say that 2 things: people are what they are in everything they do. Show me how you play tennis. I'm going to show you how you pretty much run your company.
The way you do one thing is the way you
do everything. Yeah. Show me how you treat the waiter. I'm going to know pretty much how you treat your employees.
Yeah.
And then people are telling you everything you need to know about them the minute they walk in the room, mm-hmm. which goes back to what you said about looking right. But, how people walk in a room tells, for whatever gifts God gave me or I was born with, those are gifts that I have to see those things really quickly in people. And that really is the central issue, to answer your question, is that I can see what makes people tick very mm-hmm. quickly. And that's a great relief for everybody, because I can get right to the heart of the matter without spending, 6 months.
Weeks, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know what's going on.
Yeah. What do you tend to see that people... I used to love watching Bar Rescue. My dad was into it, and then I watched it every once in a while. And you start to see the same problems with every situation, right? It's poorly managed. They're not doing the things they need to do. And just like we said before, how do you keep the customer in mind to give them the best experience possible? And I do sleepless nights, right? I'm always like, I could go bigger. I could spend more money. And then you start to battle with, like, am I spending too much? Is this how you go out of business? What do you see to be the problems or the archetypes of some of these personalities that are doing things wrong and that are easy to clean up?
To talk about generalities, I want to be very clear that I'm talking about generalities, which means there are exceptions to everything I'm going to say.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Yeah. Often, when I'm working with men, I have to teach them how to learn to say yes, because their tendency is to want to control by saying no. That, by the way, that's not you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're on the opposite.
No, I need to teach you how to say no.
Yeah.
That's a whole different issue. And I've had clients like that before.
Yeah.
But largely, I have to teach men how to say yes. When I work with women, I often have to teach them how to say no, because guys will take advantage of the fact that women, and I'm speaking in incredible generalities here.
Yep.
Women often are looking for agreement in a situation. But and that's a powerful tool. But every tool becomes a weakness if it becomes a habit. Your habit is to say yes.
Yeah.
Right? That's a powerful tool. But if it's a habit, it's a weakness. Mm-hmm. It becomes a weakness. Same thing.
I tend to see in my business, there's a lot of times where I'm kicking myself in the ass because I said yes. But at the same time, I've had a lot of value come out of me saying yes to a lot of things.
But again, it's a question of the judiciousness of knowing when to say yes and when to say no. And yours is a habit. So people get into habits of that. There is nothing in anyone's character that isn't a powerful tool as long as it is judiciously applied. And that's something that I work with people a lot on. And I change people's lives. Because if I can teach you to change your habits, everything else will change. And I work with individuals. So if I'm working with the head of a company and I'm working with him or her, and often I'm in the background, no one even necessarily knows I'm there. Suddenly that person starts to change what they're doing, change how they communicate.
Well, it's funny.
The company changes off that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It all goes down.
But it's funny to me how simple and how parallel it is to the exact same thing that I try to get people to do. I'm like, if you could change your habits, if you could change the things that you do on a daily basis, then you'll ultimately improve your lifestyle. Yeah. And you're doing the same thing with business. But it's funny because I don't see the business side. I'm like, oh, if you just change your diet and work out more and do this, it's like, I know the path to getting someone healthier and looking better and feeling better.
And the discipline. And
yes.
And the discipline.
Whereas when it comes to business, I'm like a scatterbrain. I can't even like see it. Like I could see it, happening when it comes to health and wellness. When it comes to business, I'm like, what am I fucking doing wrong?
Yeah.
It's so many times, like you see certain people. I've started so many businesses. I've tried to be an entrepreneur since I was a kid. Now it wasn't a thing then. I just enjoyed kind of dancing to the beat of my own drummer. I always wanted to have a t-shirt line. I always wanted to own a gym. I've always wanted to like kind of just, that guy's doing it this way. Well, I'm just going to do it this way because I like it better this way. And, opening multiple gyms and doing different things. I never had that instant success. And I see so many people nowadays. It's like, I started this hat company or I started, this supplement brand and it just blew up. And I'm like, what have I done? And sometimes I'm like, I'm happy about it because it allows me to speak about it and understand the struggles and understand my business better because I've had to grow it from the ground up. Whereas it's like an athlete, right? Somebody who's just naturally gifted, came easy to them, and boom, they have no problem with it. It's the same thing in business. Like I've seen so many people just instantly become successful. And I'm like, I don't even think they know how they got there.
It's correct. Yeah. They got lucky.
Yeah.
I happen to think Mark Zuckerberg got lucky. He was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Don't tell me he's brilliant. He just got lucky. And I think a lot of people are lucky, particularly in today's environment.
Do you think the way he handles the company though is luck, or do you think he's kind of developed a skill over time?
Well, I think he's developed certain skills, but I've watched him over the years make really terrible decisions.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And that's because of this. That's why I come back to say he got lucky. At a certain point, when you've got that much money, you can make mistakes. It doesn't matter. You can be Elon Musk and make those mistakes. It doesn't matter because all the money's there. And the
it's like too big to fail.
Yeah, he's too big for. Well said.
Yeah.
And so that goes on at that level, but on our level, you're eminently capable of making this thing happen that you're working on right now. Your only issue for me is, I just want discipline. For me, if I in circumstances like yours, I often have a client who calls me every 2 days for months, just because that's how long it takes to say, hey, this has come up. And you know what, Ian? You'll be proud of me. I didn't say yes. I said, I'll get back to you. What do you think? What should we do? And it's in the building of that relationship that people learn about themselves. They don't count on me forever.
Yeah.
There's this arc where you suddenly acquire it yourself.
Yeah. And again, to just go back to the parallels between the health and wellness world.
Yeah.
So many clients come to me and they're like, well, I'm doing everything right and I'm eating right. And I go, okay, how's this? Just for a day. Because if you tell somebody to do it more than a day, they never could get it done.
Yeah.
So for one day, write down everything that you put in your mouth. Leave out the sexual shit. Just give me everything.
Everything else.
Everything else that you put into your mouth, write it down.
Yeah.
And then when I get this from people and I see it, I'm like, well, here, I mean, you were at work, you were eating candies.
Yeah.
Then you went out last night and you had, 3 drinks and an appetizer and this. I go, you've overeaten 2,000 calories yesterday. They're like, I would have never thought that. So until you start writing it down, and I think it's been a huge help for me. I'm like, all right, what am I doing wrong? So until you could actually, I'm this type of person, until you see it on paper or on a screen, you just don't realize how many times you're making the same mistake over and over.
That's precisely what we tend to do. And, that's precisely what we do. So when I talk about breaking habits, I'm generally talking about breaking 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a pleasure working with you because I know we're going in that direction. And I believe that, success is an outcome, not a goal.
Mm-hmm.
I know you know this.
Yeah.
If
100%.
If you do all the right things,
it's going to happen. It's the inevitable. Yeah.
And so I think our work together is very profitable in that way because I think, and I love how tied up you are in our relationship so that we can continue to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with you and your people. You have to get intimately involved in the 2 or 3 habits they're working.
Yeah.
That they're not aware of.
Each situation is so personal. Like, I can't name 2 people that are exactly the same.
But the situation
is
entirely personal, but they're also the same.
Yeah, yeah.
And which is why you can be predictable in your world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can make predictions in your world as I can make them in mine.
Yeah. It's almost like you're driving down this road and they start to veer off a little bit and you're like, no.
Yeah. And you see it coming way before it.
Yeah, way before they do. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, it's definitely been very helpful, like just sitting down and talking about business. And there are so many people out there who are complete bullshit when it comes to what's your thoughts on all these life coaches, especially like somebody who's a life coach under the age of 30, where I'm like, you really haven't lived long enough to give anybody life advice.
Yeah. I agree.
I think there's so many people out there on social media, and listen, I'm happy for people.
Whatever gets you through the night, right?
I want to see people win. I love the idea of like being like, oh, I know that guy's done really well for himself. He did this, that, and the other thing. Because there's definitely enough to go around. There's no shortage of people on this planet. There's, when I talk about even my gyms, both my gyms would be successful at 200 people. And I'm in a town in New Jersey that's got, I think the population's like 8,000 or 9,000 people with a couple of towns surrounding it with about the same. So we're talking 30,000, 40,000 people.
Yeah, absolutely.
All I need is 200 people for my gym to be successful. Beyond that, I can't really service anybody and I can't handle much more. Here in New York, we have 8 million people with another, 3 or 4 million coming in a day.
Yeah.
Easy. So I'm like, okay, all we need to find is 200 people. There's no shortage of people. You just need to convince the people who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing to start doing it. I don't need to go pull from another gym. I need to get more people exercising because
people talking about it to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. You just need to do a good enough job. I tell people all the time, just do a good enough job that people want to tell their friends about you.
There's nothing more important. I mean, I don't advertise or I rarely exist.
Yeah, it's not like you're some fucking social media.
Not at all. It's just people as you got it
from Rachel.
Yeah, Rachel. So that's how it works.
Yeah. No, I think it's so important. I think when people realize that, like, hey, all you have to do is dial into the people that you're already servicing.
What keeps them up at night? What's in it for them?
Mm-hmm. Well, all of us kind of have the same fears and anxieties and struggles. Right?
Yeah, that's why it's easy for me to. Again, that's why it's easy to deal with. Going back to what your question was, younger folks or folks who come on as life coaches, I'm always happy to tell people what you're getting from me didn't come out of school. It didn't come out of a course. It didn't come out of studies. It's boots on the ground. When I was living in LA, every Wednesday morning, I didn't go to my company. I went to Venice High School. And I worked with at-risk children in Venice High, which is seriously at-risk children. And the first time I walked in, it was like all these kids in, hoodies, and just, they're going, what's this guy going to do for us?
Mm-hmm.
And I walked up to the board and I put my salary up on the board. And I had their attention. Because in all of that.
That's a good approach.
In all
especially
that world,
for kids,
Yeah, they want to have that control in them, what that money means. And I said, I earn this money because I have one incredible skill. I solve problems. And I solve problems better and faster than just about anybody else. And there's a reason that I do this and hardly ever make mistakes. And the reason is, in my life, I have made every mistake known to man.
Well, right then and there, you kind of got their attention because kids are like, well, I'm a fuck up. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm never going to succeed. And if I'm not good at this school thing, then I'm not going to be good at anything.
That's exactly what I was dealing with, the vibe.
Yeah.
And I was saying, you guys are solving some of the right problems. Some of you guys are solving the wrong problems. I'm here to help you, show you how to solve problems.
That's so I had a priest when I was a freshman in high school. I hated school. I love art. I love creating. I loved, working out. My freshman year, there was a priest at my school who he was loved by everyone. And I think this is why, is because he kind of understood young guys better than most. And he said to us, he's like, not all of you are going to graduate with honors from here. Not all of you are going to go to Harvard and Yale. And I was like, oh, fuck, this guy's calling me out big time. And he's like, but the guys who aren't the scholars are going to be the connectors. They're going to be the ones who are more social. And I'm like, oh shit, that's me. It almost gave me hope.
Yeah.
Like my freshman year, I'm like, I hate doing this school thing.
Yeah.
But if I could succeed, if you're telling me that I could succeed by being who I want to be and doing my thing, then shit, there, I got hope.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. And I think that's what you did for these kids, is like giving them that idea, like, hey, you don't have to be good at this school thing. You can fuck up and it's okay. And I think more kids need to hear that.
They look, the school system in America is
broken.
It's a disaster. We're graduating.
It's the only thing that's more fucked up than politics.
Oh no, I put it absolutely at the top. Next to politics, I put it at the top of the list. And those kids, we're graduating them, sitting on the street, and they don't have any of the skills.
Yeah.
And then that creates all the, all the other stuff that happens. So
most of the successful people that I know, especially here in New York, are college dropouts. Like one of my clients, he dropped out of MIT.
Yeah.
And he's a multi-billionaire now.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I never went back. He goes, they even invited me back to finish and I still didn't go. And it's incredible because there are guys I remember I went to high school with, and I'm like, God, if I was half as smart as him, that'd be so good. And, some of these guys I look at and I'm like, this guy never did shit with his life.
But you are. I make presentations to groups of people, like 100 architects or whatever I'm working with. And one of the slides comes down and says, fabulous you.
Mm-hmm.
And I turn to the audience and I say, everyone in this room is fabulous. Everyone in this room has between 3 to 5 things they do as well or better than anyone else in their company.
I agree with that.
The question is, are you doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you letting your business or your company or even yourself sidetrack you into doing other things that you're not fabulous at? And so, and I have this whole kind of talk about rearrange your life, structure your business, hire the right people, and make sure that all you do is fabulous you.
Yeah. So this is on that topic, and I'm sure I'm not the only person out there who's got the same problem.
Yeah.
I have some employees where some of them are like, I'll do everything and I can handle it and blah, blah, blah. And I've had them throughout the years. And then there's others who, have just one skill set. They're really good at this one thing. And the others get mad because they're like, well, you only have them do the fun stuff. And you have us doing all this other stuff. And I go, they're incapable of doing that other stuff.
Yeah.
How do you kind of manage those two personalities? Or like, I need both.
Yeah.
Right. I need somebody who's really good at the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And I need the people who are really good at like the Excel sheets and keeping records and doing all those things. Those people want to do the fun shit too, but they're just not as good at it as the fun people.
Yeah.
It's the scholars and then the personalities.
There are a number of elements to answering that question. One is how you hire.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to hire people whose skill sets are valid and valuable to you at that time. So the women or men who do this fun stuff, when they come into your company, do you need one right now? or do you have a place coming along where that, but the people who have to do who carry the spear, right?
Yep.
How did you?
They're like the linemen.
How did you set them up in the first place?
Yep.
How we set them up in bringing them in so that they don't have any illusions about what you want from them and how much you value and how do you reward that work?
Yeah.
You have to reward that work. People want three things. The 3 Ps. They want 3 Rs, I think. Responsibility, recognition, and reward.
Mm-hmm.
So when you bring someone in, if they understand, you have to, I think I use you in the larger sense. We have to understand how that person fits in the company before we hire them. It's not like we're going to hire them because, oh man, they had a great story about, Miami or I like them.
Yeah.
I don't care if you like them.
Yeah.
How do they fit into this equation of yours, whatever that equation is? And how do you set them up so that when they say yes to it, they know what they're saying yes to? And it doesn't change on them.
Mm-hmm. Because
I think if people came in and knew that they were going to be carrying for, they were linemen, and they knew what that was. And by the way, I have a program to reward you for that. I don't mean a program like, and if you do this, I'll get you, but some kind of recognition. And so, if I make that part of your career, if I build your career in that world, you're going to be rewarded for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you help those people understand at the beginning, not later.
Yeah.
That's the key.
I was talking to a gentleman who owns a very successful, probably the biggest chain in the country when it comes to gyms. And we were talking about that about a year ago. We were sitting down having lunch and he was like, oh, this is the guy who runs this part of the country for me, blah, blah, blah. And I go, that guy sucks. He's like, but he's so organized and he's so good at doing all that stuff. He's like, I had to give him that job because he wants that. I go, but she would be so much better at that job.
Right.
He's like, I know, but I need him. And I thought it was funny that I've had that similar situation where I said, I need to put this person there because they'd be better at it.
Yeah.
Like, do you sacrifice the business for this person who keeps the business just a little bit tighter?
Well, I think people who keep your business tight are terrifically important. Mm-hmm. But I come back to what I said. They have to know what's expected of them when you hire them.
Yeah.
It's really incredibly important, and you have to reward them for that. If you have a split, for example, you've got the character who's the personality, you've got the character that makes the parts hum. There's always a way to merge that, mm-hmm. or separate it, so that each one gets to do what it is they want to do. The person who's carrying the spears has to have a sense that that's a great job. That is.
But then you can't really teach those skills to.
Oh no, they got to listen. Well, that skill you can't. Because that comes back to organization. Mm-hmm. That comes back to people wanting order.
Yeah. See, I love order, and I'm so bad at that. Like when I have 2 young ladies who work with me, and they help me out a ton, and they just see things differently. They could keep things organized. My brain, like when I take notes, if we go to a seminar. And it's like an educational seminar for fitness, my notes are horrible. They're all over 2 pages.
I could just imagine.
Right?
I can see it.
My mind it doesn't work like
it's not sequential.
Sequential. It's not. Whereas I'll be like, all right, you just take the notes because I'm never going to be, I've been like that my whole life. There's doodles all over the page and it's just the way my mind is.
If you know that, you know how to compensate for it. So these people.
Yeah, I have to hire people.
Kristen, right?
Yeah.
People like that are fundamental to your success.
For sure.
They just have to come in and know that's what they're doing here. And if they don't want to do that and they go, oh, but I really want, don't hire them.
Yes.
You can't break out of that need because you like that person. You think that there's 100 other people behind them.
Well, and it's funny. It works both ways because you're like, oh, if I had this personality, they could help my business, but there's so many times I've hired the personality and they're the biggest fucking headaches.
It turned into shit.
Holy shit.
But that's about stepping out of yourself and watching those people. And it's more than one. I have a client who I walked through it for many months while he was restaffing his office. And he would take people he would see people 3 and 4 times before he hired them.
Yeah. God, I'll tell you what, right now I'm hiring for the new gym.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want to like this person. It would just speed up the process. But like you
can't do that.
I know. And I just this year, I fucked up on that.
Yeah.
You know,
you pay the price.
Yeah. But for me, because like I'm a yes man, I want to like people. Yeah. I want them to be good. There are certain people that when you first meet them, you're like, yeah, you're shit.
Dick.
Yeah. You're so bad at being a person.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Get out of here.
But then there's other people where you're like, all right, you have a lot of the elements that I'm looking for in this position, for this position. And then when you hang out with somebody enough, like you get 2 or 3 times in, you're like, all right, what makes you tick?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, I got this guy right now who I've been spending a lot of time with in the last couple of weeks, and, you know, church guy, which I'm not a religious guy. I don't give a shit. I respect religion. I love it. I think it's a necessity for a lot of people that need to be grounded.
Yeah. It helps you if it gets you through the night.
Yep. And for me, I love it. I respect it. It's just not what I do on a daily basis. However, this guy, every time I talk to him, he's like, I'm a church. I'm like, fuck, man, are you going to be a priest or, a church?
But what does that tell us?
I admire it.
No, set that aside.
Yeah.
I need you to act like a surgeon with a scalpel.
Mm-hmm.
What does it tell us?
He needs Jesus.
He does. He needs it. And if you need Jesus, that means you have certain rules that you adhere to, certain ways of doing things, and a certain morality and ethical value chain that is black and white. So, that tells you something about this person's character. Is that, I'm not saying it's wrong for you. Is that right for you? But those, again, if I watch you play tennis, right? So if you're always at church, heaven knows, I'm not putting that down. But what does it tell us about this person's character? What does it tell us about this person's needs? Yeah. And the way this person judges things. So it's
just, yeah. I'll tell you what, like I've had nothing but great experiences. And that's why I continue to hang out with him, because I want to be like,
is he working for you?
Not yet.
Right.
Not yet. But when you're hiring somebody, obviously you get their representative, right? You get whoever they want you to think they are.
Right. Exactly. Everyone's in sales.
Yeah. So but there's a lot of people you could just smell it on. You could see right.
Absolutely. And this guy may be wonderful to work with,
yeah.
But I'm not saying these are definite issues that he brings to the table. I'm saying that one's alarm bell has to go off around that possibility so that you can explore that more deeply. And that's what you owe him as well as yourself, because I'm not saying I'm right that this person brings all of this to it, but it's logical and it's typical. And he may be incredibly atypical. He may not bring that at all to the way you do your business, but it's incumbent upon you to find out.
Yeah. And well, what I like about that is that someone has this level of dedication to themselves and to God, whatever God you believe in. I don't give a shit which one.
You're right.
So I go, all right, I like that. I admire it.
You're right. It speaks to great discipline. It speaks to great commitment. Those are all the positives.
Those are all good.
Your job is to find out if it bleeds over into a judgment.
I agree.
That's all. And if he passes that test, then you're looking at all the positives.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely get excited when you meet somebody. You're like, I hope this works out. And then they start to show you a lot of their character. And it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable, and you're like, okay, now we could pull the trigger on this thing. It's almost like lining up your sights.
Yeah, I'll tell you, because we're talking to people out here, and I just want to pass this on. I don't interview for skills. I interview for character.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in I'll always say to anyone in New York or in the area, I say, how did you get to New York? Tell me about your trail. How did you get here from Wisconsin? I want to know what brought that person to New York.
For sure.
What did your parents do? What sports did you play in high school?
I think hot topic, but I think people are so quick to judge people on those things, like your background. Like I always like knowing, where are you from? What basically what your parents do? What do you like to do? I think all those things, we all immediately have the same type of judgment. If you're like, oh, I'm from the Midwest, I'm like, all right, he's a little laid back, a little redneck, maybe, you know, like you get these, they pop right in your head. It's like those archetypes,
yeah.
stereotypes,
Yeah.
whatever they may be. We all have the same ones. We all think the same thing about, if you're like, oh, I'm from California, you immediately have this idea of like what you think somebody from California would be like. Then you get to meet them and you start to see a little bit of those stereotypes bleed into who they are.
Yeah.
They might not be 100%,
right.
but people get so offended by that. When I tell people I'm from New Jersey, I know immediately, they're like, he's white trash.
I'm from New Jersey.
Yeah, I know. But like right away, when somebody tells me they're from Jersey, I'm like, that's where I'm from. I'm probably going to get along with you more than I would if I met somebody from Minnesota. Right? So I think we all have those stereotypes and you should never be offended by them.
I don't think so. Two things to say to that. One is it's information.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's less, to me, it's less about judgment, although that's there, than it is about information because I'm assembling this tapestry. So here's what mitigates Iowa. Learning how you got here.
Mm-hmm.
You left Iowa to come to New York City.
I think
that tells me something.
I think anybody who comes to New York.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's not, and even if you're from here and you stay here, you're like, oh, he's a dog.
No, you got to have a goal.
She's a dog.
Yeah, you got to have a goal. You can't survive here if you don't get
no.
So that's
it's gonna suck. Yeah. It's gonna suck. It's so hard.
It's gonna beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, it's gonna. And when you're here, like you're a lifer. I mean, how long have you been here?
This time 25 years, and I was here 10 or 12 years
prior to that.
Yeah, in the 80s, I was here.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I think like anytime somebody tells me they're like, I'm moving out of New York, I'm like, you're a quitter.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Gave up.
There's a judgment.
Yeah. Well, right away, because I admire the people who are like, I'm a New Yorker. There's something to be said when you go, I'm a New Yorker. You're like,
and I say,
it's a dog.
I have that feeling myself. I will always tell you, I respect everyone on the street. I don't care what color they are, what language they're speaking, what they dress like. Because if you're in goddamn New York, you have goals.
And if you're in New York, like all the shit that happened during 2020, and I go, if you live in this city, you can't be racist or prejudiced towards anything. I go, you're in the melting pot. You are here. You're in the thick of the shit.
In America, if not the world.
Yeah, if you were any of those things, you wouldn't live in this fucking.
You'd leave. You would leave.
Yeah,
but hate it here.
You have to work with these people. You have to live with them. You have to be on the subway with them. You're going to live in an apartment next to them. You can't be. And that's what I love about New York. Like the diversity in New York is so amazing to me. Like when I'm in my gym and there's so many different people from different walks of life who came from all over the world. I'm like, this is cool. Like this is so much. There was a comedian who had a skit about, he goes, I don't understand how people don't see the United States as the best country. He goes, because if you look at the Chinese team or you look at the Italian team, everybody looks the same. Yeah. They all came from the same place. He goes, you look at the American team, everybody's different. And that's so cool. It's like we all get psyched about assembling the X-Men or the Justice League. It's somebody from every walk of life who's got a different power, right? I think it's so cool. Like that's what I love about New York and about this country, you know? And I think there's beauty in that. There's beauty in all these people. And there was, I forget what it was, but there was a study a couple of years ago and they were talking about what the average American will look like by like 2050.
Right. The color of their skin.
The color of their skin.
Yeah.
Because
that sort of brownish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's so much, there's so much melding together, but so drop some wisdom on us. What are 3 things that most people should be doing when starting a business or, you know, looking out for employment? Like what are the things that you tend to see that you're telling most of your clients?
Well, one of the things I'm trying to tell people immediately is when you start a business, the structure of the business automatically becomes what I call a wagon wheel. You're at the center and everybody reports to you, right? You're making all these decisions. Very quickly, you have to get out of the wagon wheel. I see people trying to run 14 people or 20 people or a $12 million business or even a $4 million business by being in the center of it. You cannot get anywhere near your potential unless you delegate. How do you delegate? You have to hire great people. You go back to, what's fabulous you, who does this and who does that. So one of the things about starting your company is to know that very quickly you have to get out of the center of it and move to another position where people are reporting to you, and you have to hire people you can trust. That's one. The other is, again, money. You cannot think of money as the goal.
So
you have to.
It's so crazy.
I talk about the money tree, right? And I have a slide that comes up when I'm talking to people in my presentations, and it's a tree with money on it, right? You can't get under that tree and work to the money. The tree only needs one thing: sunlight and water. You give the tree sunlight and water, it will give you its fruit. The tree cannot help but give you its fruit. Life cannot help but give you success if you give it sunlight and water.
God, how much I struggle with that when I always think like, all right, when is it going to happen? When am I going to break this cycle?
Yeah, right. Because there's plenty of
I do love what I do.
Yeah.
I do it every day. People are like, when are you going to burn out? Or like, what happens when you burn out? I go, I've been burnt out, but I love what I do, so I continue to do it. But I'm always waiting for that.
No, the moment where these
where you're like,
lines cross,
shit,
and there's
finally
more money than there is trouble.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, when the fuck does that happen?
Well, I believe you and I are working on that.
Oh, God. But, and I tell myself, like, that's not why I started doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. But
it is the reward, and you're like, all right, what?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And after a certain age, it really becomes a great reward is to have the money, to have the comfort of not wondering how to write a check or where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And you, in my mind, just talking to you personally, have the structure, you have everything you need. I think we're doing the work that's going to get us to the point where you'll say no. Well, you'll say no to certain things and say yes to fewer things.
One of the other things that you had just mentioned that I wanted to talk to you about was there are so many people that I know on social media who talk about starting a business and then getting out.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. People have short attention span.
And I'm like, I developed the skills that I have on the training floor and do what I'm doing. And I love what I do. And I look at it the same as an attorney getting really good at being in a courtroom, winning over the jury, dealing with judges, dealing with clients, all that. Why would I exit at the peak of my skill level, right? When I meet trainers who are like, I don't want to be on the gym floor anymore. I go, well, then I don't think you should do this job, because that's what the job is. I never really set out to be a business owner, right? I wasn't like, I love what I do. I just kind of gravitate towards what I like doing. Like I said before, I became an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just wanted to do it my way. But the thing that I like doing the most is what I want to do. And when people are like, you need to get out, you need to stop spending your time. And I get what they're saying. Stop spending so much time on the gym floor and start doing these other things. But how do I manage to do both?
You are a big personality. And when I look at Fabulous You, it's that you are a connector, and that people like being around you, and you have great ways of meeting and bringing people into your circle. So for me, when I look at you getting out of the center and getting it into this other place on top of this pyramid, let's call it, that's the you I want to see. Now, how do you do that? You only do that by someone else taking up this other spot that you don't, I'm not talking about your relationship to your clients. You're fabulous at that. But I see you as a guy who builds your company by virtue of the power of your personality and the presence that you bring to it. And the sense of a winner that you have when you walk in the room. So for me, that's your job. So, okay, then your job is to hire one or two people who make everything else go, and you have to surrender.
All that, yeah. That's the hardest thing, finding the right people. So
it is, but we talked a little about it. It's how you hire and how you see it in this, Kenny or anyone else out there, you have to know what you want in that position. What does that position call for? Who's that position calling out to? What are the skill sets I need? Now, I don't have to like them. I had a vice president I didn't like. Damn, that guy did a great job.
Yeah.
And I made his life wonderful because he just did what I needed him to do. You have to find, and I say to everybody, you have to get away from the things you did when you started your company and become the person that's going to build your company. But you do that by creating a structure that is totally solid. One of the keys is to build a culture where you solve problems, not crises. If you don't fix something as a problem,
the problem's just
you're going to fix it as a crisis.
Yeah.
Problems only do one thing. They get bigger and bigger. So, who's that person? Who's the person, not you, who's the person you hire who loves to solve problems, hates to see them get into a crisis, and has the incredible mental agility to solve that problems. That's not a skill everybody has.
No, it's so hard.
Because part of that skill is exactly who you are, which is making people feel better when they're pissed off. Or you don't have the money to pay them, it's going to be a month. And you make them feel like, I'll have it for you in a month. Don't you worry a minute. Everything from that to the plumber or to the guy who's putting on your floor, whatever. You need that person.
Yeah.
It can't be you.
I know.
It can't be you because your job, your fabulous you-ness is over here.
It's when I'm in a better mood because there's been at least 5 times where I want to fucking kill some contract.
Yeah, someone else has to do that and report to you.
God, I'm going to end up yelling at somebody for that shit. And especially probably in about 10 minutes from now.
When you think about I'm spending money, that's great money to spend. That is the place to spend money.
Yeah.
Because that will free you up to be the guy who makes, and I know you meet people all the time and they want to be associated with you and they want to get, and 7 out of those 10 aren't for you. Because you'll say no to that, but you keep making that happen. That's your power.
Yeah. Where could people learn more about you? And you got this radio show coming, right?
Yeah, WBCR. I'm going to start in January. Yeah,
nice.
Business advice, but blah blah blah.
Nice. Where could people learn more about you?
About me,
you?
That's not easy.
You got to know somebody who knows somebody who knows something about it.
Call Kenny.
Yes. Hit me in the DMs. I'll help you out.
Just ask Kenny. He'll put on my information.
Yeah, guys. Ian, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
Guys, if you want to learn more about business, he's already helped me and some of my friends just kind of manage their business and take those day-to-day steps that need to be treated. I mean, it's like therapy, but for business.
For biz. And I just want to say that, the first conversation we have is just, we're just yakking.
Yeah.
And anyone I talk to would, I think at the end of that time go, I'd love to work with this guy, or Jesus Christ,
yeah.
And I'm good. I'm good.
And I say that all the time. I just got a review from somebody who came and took my class, and this woman's like, just absolutely shit on me. And I'm okay with it because I'm like, I'm not for everybody. I'm at the point. Yeah. When I was 30, I was like, oh shit, I should change. I should do better.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, fuck, suck my ass. I don't give a shit.
I'm good.
I just do things my way. Yeah. And I'm not for everyone. And you have to understand that your business, your product, whatever you're doing in life isn't going to be for everyone. And if you're for everyone, you're for nobody.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I have a very specific way of working, and it is extremely empowering.
Yeah.
And great with results. But if it doesn't work for you,
who gives a shit?
Yeah. I got.
It's like, you're only holding me up from getting somebody
getting
else.
to someone who really wants.
Yeah, who like
exactly it.
We connect a little bit better.
So that's the conversation. I have a conversation with somebody. We'll all figure it out.
Well, I appreciate you coming by. Thank you so much, guys. Listen, subscribe, share, do all the things. And yes, I have a little present. I've been wanting to do this on the last couple shows. Strong New York gear. Everybody should be wearing it. And Ian's got his first one.
I got mine.
Okay, I can't believe you didn't get one at Strong New York. Don't worry, I will not judge you.
I didn't buy it.
Yeah. Don't worry, you got one now. Okay. So go to shopstrongnewyork.com and grab some stuff. Thank you guys all so much for liking, subscribing, and showing up. I'll see you guys on the next one.